You want to be an informed citizen. Now more than ever, it is critical to know what's happening in the world, in your state, in the country, in your community, but not at the expense of your mental health.
Welcome back. We are here for part 2 with my conversation with the amazing Dr. Aditi Narukar. She is a Harvard physician. She specializes in stress and resilience and burnout. And she has a great book called The 5 Resets that she is telling us all about. She's giving us practical wisdom. She's teaching us about neuroplasticity. She's teaching us that rewiring our brains to heal from stress and burnout doesn't have to be as hard as we think it is. And it is good to take care of ourselves. We don't have to turn everything upside down. Again, just like we talk about all the time together, small steps, big changes. If you love the last one, you're going to love this one. If you haven't heard the last one, you need to go back and listen to that and listen to this one today. Again, I very rarely break up an interview into 2, but when there's so much goodness in an episode, I want us to be able to focus, and I don't want it to get lost in a long conversation. So that's why I break this up, so we can really learn these things that Dr. Aditi is teaching us. Okay, now without further ado, here's my new friend, Dr. Aditi. You mentioned growth earlier for ways to help move beyond stress, and you mentioned belonging. Talk about some of those other things. So we want to do the 5 resets, but what are some other things we want to make sure we're putting in our life to help us live optimally?
So there's one particular one that comes to mind, when you're talking about like the survey that you shared. Those numbers are staggering, not surprising, but just still like, jaw-dropping numbers, right? Burnout has really changed shape. So back when it first came into the lexicon in our vocabulary, it was kind of like the WHO in 2017, 2018, 19 has started talking about burnout as a real phenomenon. And it was back then considered an occupational phenomenon. It was a clinical syndrome typically happening at work. But now the modern day burnout and the face of modern day burnout has really changed. So we know that there's parenting burnout. In one recent study, 2/3 of parents said that they were burnt out. I am a parent, you are a parent. And so we've all experienced parental burnout at different stages of our lives, especially over the past several years. And, I think that number is actually underreported. 2/3 is about like 70 something percent. And I think it's probably much higher, but people just maybe, aren't as forthcoming for all the reasons that we know. We also know that burnout is really looking different now. So in one study, 60% of people with burnout had an inability to disconnect from work as one of their features.
Yeah.
And that's shocking to me because, when you think of what is burnout, you're like, oh, I'm like lying on the couch all day, just not really motivated, not productive, not really into my work. That's classic burnout. That's what you think of when you think of, oh, do you have burnout? You're saying, oh, no, I don't have burnout because I don't do any of these things. I'm very engaged. In fact, I can't shut off. You could be experiencing atypical burnout. And so as you're thinking about how to reset your brain and your body and active tools like science-backed stuff, right, that you can do, you have to kind of think about the most important thing is the rule of 2. And it's actually how your brain responds to change. And so often you will start let's say New Year's resolutions or any stage of your life. There's like a transition coming up. You have a big reunion coming up and you want to look great, or you have a trip planned, or the holidays, or maybe it's New Year's or summer break is coming up. So many transition points throughout the year. You take on so much all at once, like everything but the kitchen sink. You're like, okay, I'm going to sleep earlier. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to focus on my exercise. I'm going to stop doom scrolling. I'm going to spend more time with friends and family. And I'm going to be really productive at work. And I'm going to do a great job taking care of my kids. There are so many things, and you try to do everything all at once. And then, you try to aim to keep it going. And maybe you'll get through 2-3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks if you're lucky. And then you just stop because you just can't do all of it all at once. The reason is because it is the rule of 2. The rule of 2 is how your brain responds to change. Just like we talked about good stress and bad stress. When you are engaging in positive, healthy habits that you know are going to help you and make a difference in your life, it is still a stress to your brain because your brain still has to adapt to this new habit and this new way of life. And so aim to only do 2 new things at a time if you want those changes to stick. Anything more and your system will get overloaded. And we all have been there. We've all tried to take on a laundry list of like, all right, these are my 15 years resolutions and go. And we know, like, what is it? The January 19th, it's the 19 days after you decide to do something. So it doesn't have to be January. It can be like, okay,
Yeah.
June 1st or May 1st, I'm going to get fit for the summer. And then it's 90 days later, you're like, nah, not going to do it. And so you kind of feel like, why bother? That was so hard. Shouldn't even bother trying. Instead, focus on two things at a time. So in our conversation today, when you're thinking about what can I do? What strategies can I actually implement into my life? Whatever floats your boat, focus on those two things. And then do them for 8 weeks. Understand that it takes 8 weeks to build a habit for your brain. Falling off and getting back up is part of habit formation. And then once your brain has adapted to those two new things, then add two more and keep going. And so by the end of the year, maybe even 6 months, you will have achieved all of those things, just not all at once, because it's just too much all at once. You can't manage it all. Your brain and body can't handle it all. And so there is nothing wrong with you. You are not weak. Your brain is not broken if you can't do all of these things. It's just not meant to do all of those things all at once. So focus on two things.
I love the rule too, because it will protect us all from going into the cycle of, I'm going to do these healthy things. It's going to be good. And then getting overwhelmed by them and then beating ourselves up and feeling worse than the beginning. Let's talk about the things for our stress that we need to stop doing during the day. As a doctor, tell us, doctor's orders, we really need to cut these things out. What would those things be?
I would say two big things. The first is this little guy, this little device that is in my hand, your smartphone. You want to create some digital boundaries. And so, what are digital boundaries? In every relationship in our life, so whether we have partners, children, friends, colleagues, we have boundaries. That's what defines a healthy relationship. And yet we have no boundaries, and likely porous boundaries, when it comes to the relationship you have with your digital devices.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's about creating some healthy boundaries. And so why is that? Your brain, when you're feeling a sense of fight or flight and you're feeling a sense of stress, it's that amygdala. The amygdala is a part of your brain. It's like shaped like an almond deep in your brain. It's cave person mode. It's focused on survival and self-preservation, your immediate needs. When you're feeling a sense of threat or danger, or you're feeling unsafe or just like not quite right, back evolutionarily, when the tribe would sleep, when we were all living as cave people, there'd be a night watchman, and like that night watchman would scan for danger while the tribe slept. Now we are all our own night watchmen. And so how do we scan for danger? How do we try to keep ourselves safe or our family safe? We start scrolling. You read the headlines, you look at your social media feeds, you're scrolling, and then of course, the headlines will trigger your stress. And so your amygdala that volume gets turned up. And so you keep scrolling some more. It's called doom scrolling, but that's what's happening. And it's really your primal urge to scroll. It's a way for you to feel safe because it's your safety mechanism, right? Self-preservation, but it's gone haywire. And so you have to create some digital boundaries because it is a way to quiet that amygdala. And so there's several very easy things that you can do. The first is to keep your phone off your nightstand and invest in a low-cost alarm clock instead. That will help you not scroll at night. And it will also, most importantly, help you not scroll first thing in the morning. So about 90% of us, before we even open our eyes, we're scrolling. And that is priming your brain for stress throughout the day. Instead, say good morning to your bed partner. Go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, say good morning to your kids, stretch, adjust to the light of day, and then check your phone. This is not about becoming a digital monk. Studies show that when you abstain from devices, it's actually not that great for your health and well-being. It's about decreasing your reliance on devices because technology is a beautiful thing. I'm wearing my smartwatch. I have my phone. It's a way to stay connected and engaged. I also, my two great loves are medicine and journalism. I do both. And this is not about censorship. You want to be an informed citizen. You want to be educated about what's happening in the world and in your community. But you have to create some boundaries because you want to not do it at the expense of your mental health. And so that's the first thing. And I call that a geographical boundary. So like keep your phone, and during the day, if you can keep it, a little bit far from you, that would be great. And the other really important thing is a visual boundary when you need periods of focus. So when you're like focusing during the day and trying to get your work done, or particularly at night, and we can talk a little bit more about this. We all say like, I'm going to go to bed early. I really need to get some sleep. I'm going to be in bed at 10. And then you clean up the kitchen, dinner is done, kids are in bed. You sit down on that couch at like 9, maybe 9:30, and you're like, my time. And then you're like, I'm going to go to bed at 10. Next thing you know, you're scrolling. It's 1 a.m. What happened?
Yep.
You know that going to bed is good for you, but instead you've gone to bed too late. It's called revenge bedtime procrastination. And
I love that.
we all do it. Women are more likely to do it than men based on the
Mhm.
science. This is not a knowledge issue. When you look at the science, we all know that we should go to bed earlier. We just don't do it. And why is that? Because you're not getting any me time during the day. So it's like revenge. Bedtime procrastination is the perfect name for it. You're not getting your me time during the day. You are focused on everyone else, about their needs, their priorities, whether it's home life or work life or a mixture of the two. And so that's your time. That's your time to decompress. And instead, what I recommend is find moments during the day for brain breaks. We talked
Mhm.
about the reason that brain breaks are important, but it is a biological necessity. Studies show that when you look at brain scans, it actually changes your brain for less stress when you take brain breaks. 3 seconds works, 5 minutes works, 10 minutes works throughout the day, 4 or 5 times a day, these sorts of breaks, and put them in. Doctor's orders, put them into your calendar so you actually take brain breaks. We can talk about what to do during those brain breaks. And so at night, if you switch your phone to grayscale, it
Mm.
works great. So what is grayscale? It simply means switching your phone off of color mode to black and white mode.
It's so boring in grayscale.
So boring. And that is the point. That is the point. You can do it really easily. You go to settings, accessibility,
Mhm.
display, color filters, and grayscale. And the reason you do grayscale, studies show that it decreases your screen time because, just like you said, Ali, it makes scrolling less enticing and less interesting and frankly kind of boring. A marketing executive once said that it's like going through the grocery store when you switch your phone to grayscale. It's like going through the grocery store and you don't see the colorful cereal boxes. It's like all black and white. So are you going to pick up a cereal box when you see, filled with sugar and all these different things? No, because you're like, I'll pass. Same thing happens to your brain. It makes it less enticing and interesting. And when you're kind of bored of scrolling, you're like, okay, maybe I should go to sleep now. And so grayscale is a wonderful thing to do at night. I do it every night. And it also is a really good thing to do during the day when you have to focus, because there is this concept of like brain drain where even
Mhm.
having a phone near you can cause that sensation of like, I need to check. We check our phones
Yeah.
205 times a day, according to the most recent science. And we spend 2.5 months a year looking down at our phones. So it's really
That
time to
is
look up instead.
crazy.
I
Yeah.
know. It's just boggling. And then, so that would be like my first thing of like what not to do. And then my other what not to do, especially for us as women, is stop multitasking.
Oh, yes. I
And
studied myself. I did my own little experiment, N of one here, about like my levels of happiness during the day. And so I would check in every 15 minutes on a spreadsheet to see how I was feeling. And in my work as a business coach, that's how I spend most of my days. If there was ever a time on a call where I multitasked, an emergency popped up or a kid texted me about something or for any reason, while you could multitask, I was the least happy. And that was my indication that multitasking was stealing my joy during the day. It had nothing to do with my productivity. I just didn't enjoy my days when I was trying to do two things at once.
wow, how fascinating.
Mhm.
That is so, so cool. So, the thing with multitasking is that it's actually a scientific myth. The
Yep.
word itself, there's no such thing. It's a misnomer. And when you are multitasking, what you and I think of as multitasking, doing two things at once, in fact, what you're doing something called task switching, doing a task and doing another task right afterwards, and it's coming back and doing it. It's like two tasks, one after the other, because your brain is actually wired to do one thing at a time. And
Mm.
even though 100% of us think that we are excellent multitaskers, the truth is only 2% of human brains can effectively multitask, which is
Yeah.
a shocker. The other thing with multitasking, Ellie, that's really interesting, and I wonder if this contributed to your, what we call in science, like your subjective feelings of being less happy. What
Mhm.
happens in the science when you quote unquote multitask or task switch, it weakens your prefrontal cortex. And that prefrontal cortex, when you put your hand over on your forehead, the area right behind your forehead, that is responsible for complex problem solving, strategic thinking, planning, organization, adulting, for lack of a better word. And it weakens your prefrontal cortex. It also makes you less productive. That's kind of a shocker because you think, oh, we've all been trained to multitask because it's supposed to make you more productive. That's actually not true, according to the science. And so I am a recovered multitasker. And the
Same.
antidote, same, right? The antidote to multitasking is monotasking, doing one thing at a time. And when I suggest monotasking to people, like type A's like me and maybe you, right? Like the first thing of like, you're like monotasking, eye rolls, arms crossed, like, please. I can't monotask. I have so many things to do in a day. But you can actually monotask and get all of it done by practicing something called time blocking. And that means, like, let's say you have 4 tasks to complete in the next hour. Instead of doing them all at once, which weakens your prefrontal cortex, worsens your stress, likely contributes to your burnout. Instead, focus on one task for about 5-10 minutes and take a 2 to 5 minute break. Then focus on task 2 and take a 2 to 5 minute break, and so on for task 3 and 4. What you'll notice is at the end of that time, you will have made headway on every single one of your tasks, but you will preserve your prefrontal cortex and all of those important functions in the prefrontal cortex. And it will help you with your stress and burnout. And so those would be my 2 big things. Start grayscaling your phone and stop revenge bedtime procrastination and doom scrolling and all of that. And the second would be to stop multitasking and start monotasking.
I love this. This is absolutely brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to share something that I'm working on and get a little of your expert opinion on. So I'm not sure if by the time this show airs, it will be launched. I hope it's launched, but we're building an app for women to help de-stress, overcome burnout, and for personal growth. So guided journals, meditation, breath work, all of those things rolled up. So when our thumbs want to doom scroll, what we're saying is, let's just spend 10 minutes a day, less on social media and more investing in you. So like I said, we have guided journals, we have meditations, we have breath work, we have body scans and ways for women to relax. In all of your experience and all of the little free things people could do, what else could we add to it to give women a little moment of restoration in the middle of a busy day?
Ooh, I love this. What a great concept and venture. I would say doing something to connect the mind and the body. So small, short little mindful movement exercise to get up and move your body if they're sitting at a desk all day, to get up and do something. Because a lot of times when we're, in between meetings, you'll notice like the first thing you do after a meeting is you scroll. But we've talked about like probably not the best idea. So
Yeah.
creating some other ways to reset and get a break besides scrolling. And so, yes, breathing exercises and gratitude practices and journaling and all of that is wonderful. But also when you've been sitting, particularly for those people who work at a desk, or even just if you're not working from a desk, but you're really focused on a task during the day and working either inside the home, outside the home, when you take that moment of respite, move your body in a particularly mindful way so you can kind of focus, take a short walk up and down your hallway if you need to. You don't have to go outside. There are 30 bones and 100 muscles in your feet, a lot of grounding power. And so as you walk, articulate your feet on the floor and just kind of feel what it feels like to walk through, with your body through space and articulate your feet. So mindful movement could be a nice add-on, because what you want to do when you are resetting your stress with breaks is to focus on your feet, posture, and your breath. Those are kind of the 3 key entities to connect and tap into your mind-body connection. The other really helpful thing that I learned early on in my medical training, it was actually one of the first things I learned at my gateway into this world. I took a course on mindfulness for healthcare providers, and I learned a technique called Stop, Breathe, Be. And it is a fantastic 3-second brain reset. And I've taught it to many of my patients. I did it before you and I joined this call. And what you want to do is you want to stop, breathe, and just be. The instructions are in the name. If you practice Stop, Breathe, Be over and over again throughout the day, it is another way to tap into your mind-body connection and rewire your brain. It's a great moment to practice during transition points. So I practice Stop, Breathe, Be throughout the day, and it's a way of really grounding yourself. And why does it work? Because it taps into your mind-body connection. It gets you out of that what if thinking, which is focused on the future. It's anxious what if thinking, because anxiety is really a future focused emotion. It's not about right now, it's about what if down the road.
Mm.
And it gets you out of what if mode and gets you back to what is in the here and the now. And so I practice stop, breathe, breathe throughout the day, during my breaks, during my moments of moving from one task to another, grounding myself when I'm brushing my teeth or when I'm making dinner and there's chaos in the kitchen and there's so much happening and I need to focus. I practice stop, breathe, breathe. So that's a really nice tool, particularly for women and the many roles that we play throughout our days.
That is wonderful. We are definitely going to add this clip and your teaching and the technique to the app. So thank you for sharing with us. That's so fun.
Oh, what an honor and pleasure to join you for that.
I love it. So I asked my team, what do you want to know about stress? What are some questions? And I have 2 questions that we got so many different versions of for all of the women who like to quantify everything in their life. I had the same version of, hey, I'm doing everything right with my stress. I'm sleeping in a cool room. I am on HRT, so I shouldn't be waking up. I don't have noise in my bedroom. I'm not eating before bed, but my stress is off the charts. I'm in the red, low HRV overnight. Any ideas on what could be causing that?
I do, because I feel like I'm struggling a little bit with that myself. Our conversation is really uncanny because I was just speaking to several of my friends about this very thing just yesterday. When you have good days, you have good nights. And if your
Mm.
days aren't that great, it's going to filter into your nights. Of course it will, because we're all connected and our days and our nights are connected. And so when you focus, I think it's wonderful as a first step to do all of those things you're suggesting, sleep hygiene principles, we call them. And extra, right? Like making sure you're not eating before bedtime and all of these wonderful things. In addition, focus on a lot of these strategies that we talked about today. Create a media diet. I hate diets. I'm not a fan of a diet at all, but like this particular diet I can get behind. A media diet, right? Minimizing your doom scrolling, focus on digital boundaries. Because when you feed your mind positive, reinforcing things, then it can help you sleep better at nights. When you have a good day, you'll have a good night. And right now, particularly over the past several months, it's been a really contentious moment here, at least in the US.
Sure.
Lots of headlines, lots of high intensity emotions everywhere. You see it online on social media. You're looking through social, you're reading comments about all sorts of stuff. It's like there's a lot of anger and frustration. And so, really managing your media consumption can go a long way. I was advising some of my friends about this exact thing just yesterday. Like, we were all saying, like, oh, we're doing all of these things, and how come it's like still affecting your sleep? Your sleep is often the first to go. When you're feeling
Mm.
a sense of stress, sleep is often the first tell of like, wait a second, something's not right. So focusing on some gentle movement during the day, like taking a walk, a
Mhm.
20-minute walk can be really helpful. And if you do other forms of exercise, great. But walking, some form of relaxation training. There's several breathing exercises I do in the particular book, The 5 Resets, and there's lots of different, 4-7-8 breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, heart-centered breathing. Minimizing your media consumption can go a long way.
Well, that ties into the second question. And it was, we've all been told and we've all heard that just seeing a headline will stress us out, or seeing something obnoxious on social media, or, whatever it is, that it really does affect our stress and that it can lower our HRV. It can lower our overall happiness, just seeing one little small headline go through. So that's accurate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you see a headline, it has a direct influence on your brain chemistry. It powers up that amygdala, self preservation mechanism goes on. You get nervous. It has a direct effect on your fight or flight response. You start scrolling some more because you're thinking, oh my God, I'm in danger. Again, not you. It's your biology of stress doing, in
Right.
fact, exactly what it should. And so, yes, absolutely. So, again, I love journalism. I am frequently on TV as a commentator. Journalism is truly one of my great loves, and as well as medicine. This is not about censorship. You want to be an informed citizen now more than ever. It is critical to know what's happening in the world, in your state, in the country, in your community, but not at the expense of your mental health. And so it's about creating digital boundaries, but absolutely scrolling, engaging with news, seeing headlines, It is not a passive thing. There's no such thing as mindless scrolling. It's a myth. That's like a misnomer. Scrolling is one of the most active things that you can do for your brain, even though it looks like you're not doing much.
Wow. Okay, that's a game changer. So again, that's a plug for the app. 10, 15 minutes less scrolling a day will make you so much happier. Yeah, I mean, I think about the average person probably opens up social or headlines 10, 20 times a day. And even if we see something that isn't a terrible headline, but it's something on social that annoys us, it is affecting our brain and we're wiring our brain in a certain way.
Unfortunately, that is the case. The thing is with neuroplasticity, everything you do all day wires your brain for good or for not that good. It's a beautiful thing, neuroplasticity. It just means that your brain is a muscle and it's always responding to external stimuli and internal stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bicep, like if you don't work out your biceps for a week, okay, like you're not going to get the muscle fibers aren't going to get stronger. But maybe if you don't work out your biceps for 2 years, then your muscle fibers might start to weaken a little bit, right? In the same way, if you suddenly start again re-engaging and building up your muscle, it responds accordingly. So it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I have to do this every single day. You just, be human. There'll be periods of time when you're really committed to some of this work. And then there'll be periods of time when you're like, yeah, I'm going to take a little break and just relax and give yourself lots of self-compassion. Understand that making change, even these changes that you and I are talking about, which you hear about and you're like, yes, I want to do this. Understand that it takes time. It takes 8 weeks for your brain to build a new habit. And so give yourself lots of grace and self-compassion in the process.
I love it. Okay, 2 quick questions for you, fun questions at the end. First one, is there a book that you've read recently that you've loved?
Ooh, I am a voracious reader. And a book that I just read, in fact, last week, Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
Mel, she's a friend of mine, and I've been on her podcast several times. And she quoted me in her book, Let Them Theory. And there's like a whole section about stress and the brain and talking to Dr. Aditi. So that was lovely. And so I read that cover to cover in 3 days. And she's just the best, even better in real life than you can imagine her to be. So that was a wonderful book that I read recently. I am reading right now The Courage to be Disliked. That's one that I'm reading now.
Mm-hmm.
But I read constantly. When I was writing my book, Allie, I didn't read for an entire year as I was writing the 5 resets because I was told by various people, do not read because it will change your voice. And so I didn't watch TV. I didn't read. I decreased my use of social media. I watched Bridgerton. I think Bridgerton came out when I was writing. And so, of course, I had to watch Bridgerton. But I really did. I didn't read a thing. And then once my book was published, then I started reading everything again. But I love to read. I'm not quite a speed reader, but I can finish a book in like 3 or 4 days.
That's
I don't
impressive.
know how. I've been doing this for a long time, right? As a medical doctor, when I was a medical student, I had to retain copious amounts of information. So I probably have developed some way of speed reading, but I did do several of those speed reading apps where you're supposed to read between the lines in the white space, and that never really worked for me. So I think I have my own strategies of reading and retaining a lot of information.
I love that. Okay, well done. I was thinking when you first said speed reading app, I thought, well, maybe I need one, but no, apparently not.
I think it helps some people. I remember reading something like all the great world leaders, like everyone knows how to speed read because it's a skill because then I read that in like college sometime. And I thought, I'm going to become a speed reader. I'm sure there are many apps that could work. I just kind of have developed, a technique that works for me.
I love that. Well, that's new growth unlocked. There's a challenge for me. That'll help me fix my stress. I love that. And last question, what about a product that made you tell a friend she needed to have it? She or he?
Ooh, there are so many. I really enjoyed Beauty by Joseon as like a under eye retinol cream. I'm new to retinols in this world. There's this thing called the PCA hyaluronic acid serum that I've been loving. I really am into skincare.
Your skin is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I do all sorts of stuff, like all sorts of serums and creams and hydration from the inside, from the outside. And I love skincare, fashion. I love it. I think it makes me feel good. And I will say that, it took me a long time to be able to embrace and like outwardly say, I love fashion. I love beauty. because when you're a doctor and you're in
Mhm.
training, you, especially here in the US, I don't know, other countries are more, loose with this, but at least in the US, if you are a smart woman, you are not supposed to be focused on these other things. And if you're focused
Right.
on those other things, you might not be as smart. And I reject that wholeheartedly. I think we are multidimensional and we have so many facets to our lives. So, yes, I love science. I love journalism. I love beauty and fashion and travel. And it's what makes me me. And so some of these beauty recommendations have brought me a lot of joy, as much joy as, say, my mindfulness training or all of that.
I love that. Hey, you are a mold breaker. You're a woman who is not going to be kept in a box. I love that.
Just
Tell
like
us
you, just like you.
Tell us all where we can find you.
You can find me all over social media at DrAditiNerurkar. Oof, that's a mouthful. You can also check out my website, draditi.com. That's DrAditi.com, or
Mhm.
my book website, 5resets.com. Number 5resets.com.
Wonderful. We will link to everything in the show notes. And again, thank you for taking time out of your day to come join us. Your work has been so impactful to me. It's been a real joy to get to talk to you.
Allie, I'm such a fan of your work. Thank you so, so much for having me.
Again, fantastic. I love this one. It was so fun getting to put her on the spot and going, okay, what else do I need to build in this app? Because I'm building this app to be everything that you need to feel better during the day, to have that peace, to build in just a few moments to be able to catch your breath and balance out the stress that we feel. So she was so gracious to play along. And as always, I'm so grateful that we get to spend this time together every week. Thank you for investing in you. Thank you for doing the things that are going to help you balance out stress so you could be happier, you can be healthier. And not only for you, people in your life are watching. Your children are watching. Your colleagues are watching. The people you don't even know are watching because a healthier you emotionally, spiritually, your personal development, it does affect everyone in your life for the good. I believe in the gifts that God has placed inside of you. I believe in your dreams. And I know you're making an impact on this world. You're doing it for good. That's why you're here every week, learning some small tip, something that's going to help you just grow, be a little happier, a little healthier, and live with more joy and peace, one step at a time. So let me remind you, you're stronger than you think, you're smarter than you give yourself credit for, and you're braver than you feel in the hard moments. And the best part, you're just getting started. You are capable of incredible things because the Spirit of God lives in you. The dreams in your heart aren't there by accident. God placed them there and He's giving you everything you need to live them out. It is my joy to get to coach you. It's my joy to give you tools and tips and just remind you that with God, you have what it takes. So keep stepping up, keep showing up, and keep loving well because you know the truth. You can't break a woman who gets her strength from God. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. But when there's a lot of meat on that bone and we really want to dig into it, was that a dumb thing to say? I don't know. You guys can edit that out. Oh, it's definitely not going to be out. That's fine. Let me redo that.